The house felt wrong the moment I stepped inside, like the air had been sucked out and replaced with something heavy. My boots echoed on the hardwood floor, louder than usual, and the quiet gnawed at me. Thursdays were never this silent. Logan's video games usually blared from the living room, or Talia's playlists would hum through the kitchen. But tonight, nothing. I dropped my keys on the counter, the clink sounding sharp in the stillness, and that's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper on the coffee table, sitting there like it owned the place. My stomach twisted before I even touched it, some instinct warning me this wasn't a grocery list or a reminder about parent-teacher night. I picked it up, the edges soft from being handled, and unfolded it slowly, like I could delay whatever was coming. Her handwriting stared back at me, neat and deliberate. I'm starting afresh with someone I love. Don't contact me. Take care of Logan. I read it again, then a third time, because my brain refused to catch up. Talia was gone. My wife of 12 years, the woman I'd built a life with, just left. No warning, no fight, no chance to ask why. I sank onto the couch, the note still in my hand, and tried to piece it together. We'd had arguments, sure. Money was tight, work was long, but nothing like this. Nothing that screamed she'd vanish. My eyes drifted to the coffee table, where a stack of unopened bills sat, and a cold realization started creeping in. I grabbed my phone and opened our bank app, fingers shaking as I logged in. The savings account was empty. Not low, empty. I checked the credit card balance, and my chest tightened. Maxed out. Thousands over the limit. I pulled up the car loan account next, praying I was wrong. But there it was, a $20,000 balance in my name, tied to the SUV she drove. Then the student loan, $35,000, also in my name, from her degree she never finished. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at numbers that didn't add up to the life I thought I had. The room spun, and my throat felt like it was closing. She took the car, my laptop, my toolbox, the one I'd had since my dad gave it to me. Everything I'd worked for, everything we'd built, gutted in one clean swipe. And Logan, our son, 10 years old, was left behind like an afterthought. The thought of him snapped me out of it. Where was he? I stood, legs unsteady, and called his name. My voice cracked, too loud in the quiet house. Logan? You hear? Footsteps came from the hallway, small and deliberate. He appeared in the doorway, his dark hair messy, his backpack still slung over one shoulder like he'd just gotten home from school. His eyes, sharp like his mother's, locked onto mine, and for a second, I thought he'd ask where she was. Instead, he walked over, calm as anything, and sat beside me on the couch. It's okay, Dad, he said, his voice steady in a way that made no sense for a kid his age. I took care of it. I blinked at him, the words not landing right. Took care of what, bud? My voice sounded hollow, like it belonged to someone else. He didn't answer right away, just reached into his backpack and pulled out a crumpled notebook, flipping it open to a page filled with scribbled dates and numbers. I knew something was weird with Mom, he said, pointing at the page. She was acting funny, hiding her phone, leaving at weird times. So I started keeping track. I stared at the notebook, my mind racing to catch up. This was my kid, my goofy, Lego-obsessed kid, talking like he'd been playing detective while I was clueless. Part of me wanted to laugh, to tell him he was being silly, but the look on his face stopped me. He wasn't joking. What do you mean? You took care of it. I asked again, softer this time, leaning closer. He met my eyes, and there was something fierce there, something that scared me a little. I saved stuff, he said. Important stuff. Like papers and things she didn't know I saw. We're gonna be okay, Dad. I promise. I didn't know what to say. My world had just cracked open, and here was my son, holding pieces I didn't even know existed. I pulled him into a hug, his small frame solid against me, and for a moment, the weight of everything, the debt, the betrayal, the empty house, felt a little lighter. But only a little. The note still sat on the table, her words burning into me. I didn't know what Logan meant by taking care of it, and I didn't know how deep this mess went. All I knew was that my wife had walked out, leaving me with a mountain of debt and a kid who was somehow stronger than I felt. I looked at him, his notebook still open on his lap, and realized I had two choices: fall apart or figure out how to fight back. For him, I'd fight. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, each second stretching the silence between us. I thought about calling her, demanding answers, but her note said not to contact her. She'd made her choice. My eyes drifted back to the bills, the empty bank account, the life she'd torn apart. Anger started to burn through the shock, slow at first, then hotter. She didn't get to do this. Not to me, not to Logan. I didn't know what my son had up his sleeve, but I trusted him in a way I couldn't explain. He'd seen something I'd missed, and that was enough for now. I ruffled his hair, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "All right, bud," I said, my voice steadier than before. "Let's eat something, then you can show me what you've got." He nodded, a small grin breaking through. And for the first time that night, I felt like we might just survive this. I couldn't sleep that night, my eyes locked on the ceiling, the shadows shifting with every car that passed outside. The house was too quiet without her, without the hum of her late-night TV shows or the clink of dishes she'd wash when she couldn't sleep either. But it wasn't just her absence keeping me awake. It was the weight of everything she'd left behind. $55,000 in debt, a drained savings account, maxed out credit cards, all in my name, like I'd signed up for this nightmare myself. My chest felt tight, not from sadness, but from a kind of helpless rage I didn't know what to do with. I kept replaying her note in my head, those cold words about starting over with someone she loved. Who was he? How long had this been planned? And how had I missed it? The questions churned, each one sharper than the last, until I heard the floor creak outside my door. Logan poked his head in, his silhouette small against the hallway light. "Dad? You awake?" His voice was soft, like he wasn't sure he should be there. I sat up, rubbing my face, then waved him in. "Yeah, bud. Can't sleep either." He shuffled over, his pajamas too big, and climbed onto the bed beside me, dragging his blanket with him. For a moment, we just sat there, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. Then he spoke, his words so quiet I almost missed them. I knew something was off with Mom, so I made backups. I turned to him, my brain sluggish from exhaustion. "Backups? What do you mean?" He didn't look at me, just stared at his hands, twisting the edge of the blanket. "She was acting weird for months," he said. "Hiding her phone when I walked in, whispering on calls when she thought I was asleep. I didn't like it, so I started saving stuff." He reached for his backpack, which he'd left by the bed, and pulled out that same crumpled notebook from earlier. But this time, he also grabbed a small flash drive, holding it up like it was a trophy. I took pictures of bank papers, copied some of her texts when she let me use her iPad, and I put a tracker app on it. I blinked at him, trying to process what I was hearing. My 10-year-old son, the kid who still forgot to tie his shoes half the time, had been playing spy. Part of me wanted to laugh, wanted to tell him he'd been watching too many detective shows, but the look on his face stopped me cold. He was serious, and there was a spark in his eyes, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "A tracker app?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "You tracked her iPad?" He nodded, a little proud but trying not to show it. "She never logged out. I saw where she went, hotels, weird addresses, places she didn't tell us about. I saved it all here." He tapped the flash drive, then opened his notebook to a page filled with dates, times, and locations, written in his messy kid handwriting. I took the notebook, my hands unsteady, and scanned the entries. There were dozens of them, going back months, coffee shops, motels, some address in Brookridge 2 towns over. My mind raced, piecing it together. She'd been slipping away long before that note, building a whole other life while I was working overtime to pay the bills. I looked at Logan, his small frame curled up beside me, and felt a mix of awe and guilt. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, softer than I meant to. He shrugged, picking at a loose thread on the blanket. "Didn't want to make you sad. I thought maybe I was wrong." But then she left, and I knew I had to do something. The guilt hit harder than the anger. He'd been carrying this alone, watching his mom unravel our family while I was too busy to notice. I put my arm around him, pulling him close, and he leaned into me, his head against my shoulder. "You did good, bud," I said, my voice thick. "Real good." He didn't say anything, just nodded, but I could feel the tension ease out of him. For a while, we sat like that, the flash drive resting on the bed between us like a tiny bomb waiting to go off. I didn't know what was on it yet, but it was something proof, maybe, of whatever she'd been doing. It was more than I had yesterday, and that was enough to keep me going. I glanced at the clock, 2 a.m. My body screamed for sleep, but my mind wouldn't quit. I kept thinking about the debt, the car, the laptop she took. My work files were on that thing, contracts I needed for my job. I'd have to start over, rebuild everything she'd torn down. But then I looked at Logan, already half asleep against me, and something shifted. He wasn't just a kid caught in the crossfire. He was my partner in this, whether I liked it or not. His backups were a lifeline, a chance to claw our way out of this mess. I didn't know how to use them yet, but I'd figure it out. For him, I had to. "Let's get some rest," I said, easing him down onto the pillow. He mumbled something, already drifting off, and I pulled the blanket over him. I lay back, staring at the ceiling again, but this time it wasn't despair keeping me awake. It was a flicker of hope, small but stubborn. That flash drive, those notes, they were weapons. She thought she'd left us with nothing, but she didn't know about Logan. She didn't know about me. I reached for the notebook, flipping through it one more time, and stopped on a date from last month. Brookridge, 8 p.m., motel. My jaw tightened. Whoever this guy was, wherever she was, they weren't as clever as they thought. I set the notebook down, careful not to wake Logan, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, we'd start digging. Tomorrow, we'd fight back. For now, I let the sound of my son's breathing ground me, a reminder that we weren't alone in this. We'd face it together, and we'd win. The next morning, I dragged myself to work, my body moving on autopilot while my mind churned with everything from the night before. The warehouse was loud, forklifts beeping, crates slamming, guys shouting over the noise, but it all felt distant, like I was underwater. I kept seeing her note, those cold words about starting over with someone else, and Logan's notebook, filled with secrets I hadn't been ready to face. I was supposed to be unloading shipments, checking inventory, but my hands fumbled, dropping a box of parts that scattered across the floor. My buddy Pete clapped me on the shoulder, laughing it off, but I barely managed a nod. By noon, I was sweating through my shirt, not from the work, but from something tighter, heavier, pressing against my chest. I thought I could push through it, keep moving, keep breathing, but then the room tilted, and my vision went blurry at the edges. I don't remember much after that. Just flashes, Pete's voice yelling my name, the cold concrete under my back, someone shoving an oxygen mask over my face. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, the beep of a monitor steady beside me. The doctor, a guy with gray hair and a clipboard, told me it was exhaustion, stress, maybe dehydration piling on top of it all. "Your body's telling you to slow down," he said, like it was that simple. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was too dry. Slow down? With $55,000 in debt, a kid to raise, and a wife who'd gutted my life? I didn't have that luxury. They kept me overnight, running tests, but all I could think about was Logan. I'd left him with my sister that morning. She'd picked him up for school, but he'd be wondering where I was. I couldn't let him see me like this, broken and hooked up to wires. They let me go the next morning, handing me a bottle of pills and a pamphlet about managing stress. I tossed the pamphlet in the trash on my way out. The hospital air was sharp, and the sunlight hurt my eyes as I climbed into a cab, my wallet lighter from the fare I couldn't afford. When I got home, the house was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel empty, just waiting. My sister had dropped Logan off earlier, and I found him in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. The smell hit me, chicken and vegetables, warm and familiar, and for a second, I forgot the hospital, the debt, everything. He looked up, his face serious but soft, and said, "You're back." "Good." I made soup. I stood there, leaning against the doorway, watching my 10-year-old son ladle soup into a bowl like he was the one taking care of me. It should have been the other way around. I was supposed to be the strong one, the one with answers. But my legs felt like lead, and my head was still foggy from whatever they'd given me at the hospital. "You didn't have to do that, bud," I said, my voice rough. He shrugged, setting the bowl on the table and pointing to a chair. "Sit. Eat. You look like you need it." I managed a half smile and did what he said, the warmth of the soup spreading through me as I took a sip. It was good, better than I expected, and it hit me how much he'd been carrying, how much he'd stepped up when I hadn't even noticed. He sat across from me, watching me eat, his hands folded like he was waiting for something. I set the spoon down, knowing he had more to say. "What's on your mind?" I asked, trying to sound steady. He leaned forward, his voice low but fierce. "She doesn't get to win, Dad. I'm helping you fix this." The words landed like a punch, not because they hurt, but because they were so sure, so certain, in a way I couldn't manage right then. I looked at him, his messy hair, his too big sweatshirt, and saw something I hadn't before, resolve. Not just a kid's stubbornness, but a real, burning need to make things right. It shamed me a little, how I'd let myself collapse when he was still fighting. "Fix it how?" I asked, leaning back in the chair. I didn't want to push him too hard, but I needed to know what was going on in that head of his. He hesitated, then pulled his notebook from his backpack, flipping it open to a new page. "I've been thinking," he said. "The stuff I saved, the bank papers, the tracker, it's not just for us to know where she went. It's proof. Like, for a lawyer or something. We can show what she did, make her pay it back." I raised an eyebrow, caught between pride and disbelief. "You've been watching courtroom shows too, huh?" He grinned, just for a second, then got serious again. "I looked it up online. If someone puts debt in your name without you knowing, it's fraud. We can fight it." I took the notebook, scanning the new notes he'd added. Words like forgery and liability that no kid should know. It was messy, half-guessed, but it was something. A spark. I'd been so caught up in the shock of her leaving, the weight of the debt, that I hadn't thought about fighting back. Not like this. I'd figured I'd just work harder, pay it off slowly, let her disappear into whatever life she'd chosen. But Logan's words, his soup, his stubborn little plan, they woke something up in me. I wasn't just a guy she'd screwed over. I was a father, and my kid deserved better than a dad who gave up. I reached across the table, ruffling his hair. "You're something else, you know that?" He ducked away, pretending to be annoyed, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. We didn't say much after that, just sat there while I finished the soup, the kitchen clock ticking softly in the background. The hospital had shaken me. My body giving out like that wasn't something I could ignore, but sitting here with him, I felt a little steadier. Not whole, not yet, but like I could keep going. I thought about the flash drive, the tracker, all the pieces he'd collected while I was blind to it all. They weren't just clues, they were a way out, maybe. A chance to take back what she'd stolen. Not just the money, but our future. I cleared the dishes, moving slow, and he helped without me asking. As we washed the pot, I made a promise to myself. No more breaking down, no more letting her choices bury us. Logan had given me a lifeline, and I'd use it. Tomorrow, I'd call in sick, start looking at those papers he'd saved, maybe even find a lawyer who'd take a case like this. For now, I glanced at him, drying his hands on a towel, and felt a quiet strength settle in. We weren't done, not by a long shot. The morning light crept through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the table where Logan sat, his Chromebook open and his fingers flying over the keys. I stood by the counter, nursing a cup of coffee that was already cold, watching him work like he was on a mission. Yesterday's hospital scares still lingered, my muscles ached, and my head felt heavy, but I pushed it down. No time to feel fragile, not when my kid was sitting there, piecing together a puzzle I hadn't even known existed. He'd been up before me, his notebook spread out beside him, pages filled with more notes than last night. I set my mug down and leaned over his shoulder, trying to make sense of the screen. "What's all this?" I asked, keeping my voice light so he wouldn't think I was doubting him. He didn't look up, just clicked through a map dotted with red pins. "She's in Brookridge," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. 2 towns over. GPS confirms. I froze, my hand tightening around the mug. Brookridge. The name matched one of the addresses in his notebook, but hearing it out loud made it real. She was close, closer than I'd expected. I pulled a chair up beside him, the scrape of wood against tile louder than it should have been. "You're sure?" I asked, leaning closer to the screen. He nodded, zooming in on a pin dropped at some motel off the highway. Her iPad's been there since yesterday. Same place she went a couple times last month. His voice was steady, but I caught the edge in it, like he was trying to stay calm for my sake. I stared at the map, my mind racing. She was out there, living her new life, while we were stuck cleaning up her mess. The thought twisted something in my gut, but I swallowed it, focusing on the screen. "What else you got?" I asked, because I knew he wasn't done. He clicked over to a new tab, this one a social media profile with a grainy photo of a guy, mid-30s, slick back hair, wearing a leather jacket like he thought he was in a movie. "This is him," Logan said, tapping the screen. "Nico Dallin. He's got a used car lot in Brookridge, but it's mostly a front. Look at his posts." I scanned the page. Pictures of cars with captions full of typos, selfies and dive bars, a few comments from people calling him out for late payments or bad deals. A failed musician, Logan said, who'd switched to selling beat-up sedans when the gigs dried up. My jaw tightened as I scrolled, landing on a photo of him grinning beside a woman whose face was cropped out. Something about the way her hand rested on his arm felt familiar, and I didn't need to see the rest to know who it was. How'd you find this guy? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Logan shrugged, like it was no big deal. Her iPad had his name and some messages. I searched him up, found his accounts. He's not exactly hiding. I leaned back, rubbing my face, trying to wrap my head around it. My son had tracked her to a motel and dug up her boyfriend's whole life, while I'd been too stunned to even check the mail. Part of me wanted to shut the laptop, tell him to stop, that this was too much for a kid to handle. But he wasn't just a kid anymore, not after what she'd done. He was in this with me, whether I liked it or not. Then he dropped the real bombshell. That's not all, he said, pulling up another tab with an insurance company's website. I flagged the car's VIN last night. Told them it's being used without your permission. My eyes snapped to him, coffee forgotten. You did what? He didn't flinch, just kept clicking through a form he'd already filled out. The SUV's in your name, right? She took it without asking. That's unauthorized use. I sent a tip, anonymous, don't worry. And I reported the car loan as fraud to the bank. Same deal. He paused, glancing at me like he was waiting for me to yell. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just stared, my mouth half open, as he explained how he'd found the VIN on some paperwork in the garage and cross-checked it with the loan documents he'd photographed months ago. I let out a low whistle, half laugh, half disbelief. You're 10, I said, shaking my head. How do you even know this stuff? He grinned, just for a second, then got serious again. Internet's free, Dad. Plus, I watch those scam shows with Aunt Jen. They talk about this kind of thing all the time. I wanted to hug him, shake him, something, anything to let him know how incredible he was. But I just nodded, letting him keep going. He showed me an email confirmation from the insurance tip, time-stamped at 2 a.m., and a screenshot of the fraud report he'd submitted to the bank. They'll probably call you soon, he said. Just tell them you didn't approve the car leaving or the loan getting bigger. I sat back, my head spinning. He'd done more in one night than I'd managed in the 2 days since she left. The motel pin, the boyfriend's profile, the insurance tip, it was all coming together, a map of her betrayal laid out on a kid's laptop. I thought about that photo of the guy, Nico, his smug grin, and the woman's hand on his arm. Anger flared, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. Getting mad wouldn't fix this. Logan's work would. I reached over, squeezing his shoulder. You're something else, bud. You know that. He ducked his head, cheeks pink, but I could see he was proud. The kitchen clock ticked, marking the seconds we sat there, the screen glowing between us. I thought about Brookridge, that motel, her out there thinking she'd gotten away clean. She hadn't counted on Logan, neither had I, if I was honest. I took a sip of the cold coffee, grimacing, and made a decision. All right, I said, standing up. We're not just sitting on this. You've got all this proof. Let's figure out what to do with it. Together. He looked up, eyes bright, and nodded. Deal. I grabbed my phone, scrolling for a lawyer's number I'd seen on a billboard once, someone who handled fraud cases. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The hospital had knocked me down, but this was me getting back up. For Logan, for us, I'd keep going. The phone rang while I was pouring cereal, the sound slicing through the morning quiet like a warning. I glanced at the screen, and my stomach dropped. Her number. Talia. I hadn't heard from her since she left that note 4 days ago, and now here she was, calling like nothing had happened. Logan looked up from his bowl, his spoon pausing midair, and I could tell he knew who it was without me saying a word. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, then hit accept before I could overthink it. Her voice came through, shaky and rushed, not the calm, collected tone I was used to. Miles, I need your help. The police are asking questions about the car loan. Did you say something? I leaned against the counter, the edge digging into my back, and let her words hang there for a second. Logan's eyes were on me, sharp and steady, and I could almost hear him thinking, don't let her off easy. I forced a smile, keeping my voice even. Let's meet. Bring the car. She stammered, caught off guard, but agreed faster than I expected. Okay, yeah. There's a cafe by the park in Brookridge. Noon. I said I'd be there and hung up, my pulse hammering. Logan set his spoon down, leaning forward. What did she say? I told him about the police, the car, and watched his face light up, just for a moment, before he hid it behind a nod. That's the insurance tip I sent, he said, matter of fact. It's working. We spent the next hour planning. I didn't want to walk into this blind, not with her and whatever mess she was tangled in. Logan pulled up the cafe's location on his Chromebook, showing me the park nearby, open, public, plenty of people around. Good spot, I said, ruffling his hair. He squirmed but didn't pull away. I grabbed my keys, then remembered we didn't have a car. Hers was gone, and mine was in the shop for a busted alternator I couldn't afford to fix yet. My sister Jen offered to drive us, no questions asked, and by 11:30, we were rolling into Brookridge, the town's faded welcome sign flashing by. Jen dropped us off a block from the cafe, her eyes soft with worry. "You sure you're okay doing this?" she asked. I nodded, squeezing her hand. "We've got it." The cafe was small, with glass windows that reflected the park across the street, kids on swings, dogs chasing frisbees, normal life going on like nothing was wrong. Logan and I stepped inside, the smell of coffee and burnt toast hitting me as I scanned the room. She was already there, sitting in a corner booth, her hair pulled back tight, her hands twisting a napkin into knots. Beside her was a guy, Nico, I figured, from the leather jacket and the cocky tilt of his head. He looked just like his social media photos, only greasier in person, his eyes darting around like he was waiting for trouble. I took a breath, steadying myself, and walked over, Logan right beside me. She saw us and stood, her face a mix of guilt and something I couldn't read, panic, maybe. "Miles," she said, her voice too soft, like she was trying to smooth things over already. I didn't sit, just stood there, arms crossed, and nodded at the guy. "This him?" Nico leaned back, smirking like he owned the place. "Yeah, I'm Nico. And you're the ex, huh?" I ignored him, my eyes on her. "Where's the car?" She flinched, glancing at Nico, who shrugged. "It's outside," she said. "But the police, they're saying it's fraud or something. I don't understand." I let her squirm, remembering Logan's tip to the insurance company, the VIN he'd flagged. "Funny thing," I said, keeping my voice low. "The car's in my name. So's the loan. You took it without asking, ran up the balance, and now you're surprised there's trouble." Nico snorted, leaning forward. "We just borrowed it, man. Chill." I turned to him, my jaw tight. "Borrowed? It's theft. And fraud, since you're driving a car tied to a loan I didn't approve." His smirk faltered, just for a second, and I felt a small spark of satisfaction. Logan, who'd been quiet, stepped forward, his backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked at him, her face softening like she thought she could win him over. "Logan, sweetheart," she started, reaching out. He cut her off, his voice sharp. "Don't. You chose him. We choose peace." I froze, caught off guard by how final he sounded, how much weight those words carried. Her hand dropped, and for a moment, I saw something crack in her, regret, maybe, or just the shock of hearing her son shut her out. Nico shifted, uncomfortable, and muttered something about getting coffee, but nobody moved. The air felt thick, every sound in the cafe amplified, the clink of cups, the hum of voices, the creak of the door as someone walked in. I kept my eyes on her, waiting for an excuse, an apology, anything. But she just sat there, the napkin in her hands now shredded into strips. I could have pushed harder, demanded answers about the debt, the savings, the guy sitting next to her like he belonged in our lives. But Logan's words echoed in my head. We choose peace. He was right. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about us, about getting free of the mess she'd made. I leaned down, my voice quiet but firm. "You've got two choices. Bring the car back, deal with the police yourself, or I keep pushing fraud, theft, all of it. Your call." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her eyes darting to Nico, who was suddenly very interested in his phone. I straightened, glancing at Logan. "Let's go, bud." He nodded, already turning for the door, and I followed, my heart pounding but steady. Outside, the park was still alive with noise, kids laughing, a dog barking, and it felt like a different world from the one we'd just left. We walked to the corner where Jen was waiting, her car idling. I didn't look back, didn't need to. Logan climbed into the back seat, and I slid in beside him, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Jen raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. "Home," she said. I nodded, leaning my head against the window. The cafe faded behind us, and with it, the weight of seeing her again. Logan reached over, squeezing my hand, and I squeezed back. We'd faced her, faced him, and we were still standing. That was enough for now. The drive back from the cafe felt longer than it should have, the hum of Jen's car doing little to quiet the storm in my head. Logan sat beside me in the back seat, staring out the window, his backpack hugged tight like it held all his secrets. Seeing her at the cafe, her nervous hands, her weak excuses, had left me raw, but it was his words that kept replaying. "You chose him. We choose peace." He'd said it with such clarity, like he'd been carrying that line for weeks, waiting for the moment to let it out. I glanced at him, his face half-lit by passing streetlights, and wondered how a kid so young could be so strong when I was barely holding it together. The anger I'd felt seeing her with that guy, Nico, hadn't faded, but it was shifting into something else, something sharper, more focused. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was ready to fight back. When we got home, the house was dark, the kind of quiet that settles in when you're too tired to turn on lights. Jen offered to stay, but I waved her off, promising to call if we needed her. Logan dropped his backpack by the couch and headed for the kitchen, pulling out a soda like nothing had happened. I followed, leaning against the counter, watching him crack the can open. "You okay, bud?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. He took a sip, then nodded, but his eyes didn't meet mine. "Yeah, just didn't like seeing her like that." I knew what he meant, her shaky voice, the way she looked at Nico for backup. It wasn't the mom he remembered, and that hurt more than I could fix. I was about to say something, anything to fill the silence, when he set the can down and looked at me, his face serious. "By the way, Mom, you're not even his only girlfriend." My mouth opened, but no words came out. He reached into his backpack, pulling out a folded sheet of paper, a printed screenshot of an Instagram thread. He handed it to me, and I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the image. Nico, shirtless, grinning in a hot tub, his arm around a woman who wasn't her. The date on the post was from last week, the caption some cheesy line about living the dream. Comments below it were brutal, people calling him a player, others tagging someone else, hinting at another girlfriend. I looked up at Logan, stunned. "Where'd you get this?" He shrugged, taking another sip of soda. "Found it last night. His account's public. He's not smart about it." I shook my head, half laughing despite myself. My kid, 10 years old, digging up dirt like a private investigator while I was just trying to keep us fed. I set the paper down, my mind racing. This wasn't just gossip. It was leverage, something to shake her up, make her see who she'd left us for. I was about to ask what else he had when he spoke again, his voice quieter now. "I also invited someone else to meet us today." I frowned, confused. "Who?" He didn't answer, just pointed toward the window. I walked over, pulling the curtain aside, and saw a car pulling into the driveway, one I hadn't seen in years. My heart skipped as the door opened and Mrs. Ortiz stepped out, her gray hair tied back, her face set like she was ready for war. Talia's mother. I hadn't talked to her since last Christmas, but I'd called her yesterday, late, after Logan showed me the tracker data. I'd told her everything, the note, the debt, the guy in Brookridge. She hadn't said much, just asked for our address and hung up. Now she was here, her suitcase rolling behind her as she marched to the door. I opened it before she could knock, and her eyes locked onto mine, fierce but tired. "Where is she?" she asked. No hello, no small talk. I stepped aside, letting her in. "We just saw her in Brookridge." "She's not herself." Logan appeared behind me, and her face softened for a moment. "Logan, me Joe," she said, pulling him into a hug. He hugged back, but his eyes flicked to me, like he was checking if this was okay. I nodded, and she let him go, turning back to me. "You said she left for some man. Tell me everything." We sat at the kitchen table, and I laid it out, the $20,000 car loan, the $35,000 student debt, the maxed out cards, the empty savings. Her jaw tightened with every word, her hands clasped so hard her knuckles went white. When I got to Nico, Logan slid the Instagram printout across the table. She picked it up, her eyes narrowing at the photo, and I saw something break in her, a mother's fury, deeper than mine could ever be. "She left my grandson for this," she said, her voice low, almost a growl. "This, nothing of a man who can't even keep his lies straight?" She set the paper down, her hands shaking, and looked at Logan. "You did good, finding this." He nodded, a small smile breaking through, and I felt a surge of pride. Mrs. Ortiz leaned back, her eyes on me again. "I flew in because I didn't believe it when you called. But now, I'm ashamed she's my daughter." The words hit hard, not because I disagreed, but because they were so final, like she was cutting her own child out of her heart. We talked for hours, the kitchen clock ticking past midnight. She wanted to confront her daughter, drag her back to reality, but I shook my head. She made her choice. "Right now, I just want to protect Logan, get us out of this debt." She nodded, understanding, and promised to help, money, if we needed it, or a place to stay if things got worse. I thanked her, but my mind was already on Logan's bombshell, that Instagram thread. If Nico was cheating on her, she'd find out soon enough. Maybe she already had, given how shaky she'd been at the cafe. I pictured her face when she saw that photo, the betrayal sinking in, and felt a grim satisfaction. She'd hurt us, but her world was cracking too. Logan yawned, his head drooping, and I sent him to bed, promising we'd talk more tomorrow. Mrs. Ortiz took the couch, insisting she didn't need a guest room. As I climbed the stairs, the Instagram printout still on the table, I felt something shift. The cafe had been a start, but this, her mother here, Logan's evidence, it was a turning point. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were building a case, a way to take back what she'd stolen. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since she left, I didn't feel buried. I felt alive, ready for whatever came next. The morning after Mrs. Ortiz arrived, I woke with a purpose I hadn't felt in days. The house smelled of coffee and toast, and I found her in the kitchen, already up, scribbling notes on a pad like she was planning a battle. Logan was still asleep, his door closed, and I was grateful for it. He needed rest after everything he'd been carrying. I poured a mug of coffee, the warmth steadying my hands, and sat across from her. She didn't waste time. "I've been thinking," she said, tapping her pen against the pad. "You can't let her walk away from this. The money, the lies, it's not just about you. It's about Logan." Her eyes were fierce, and I nodded, knowing she was right. Yesterday's cafe meeting had been a spark, but today, I was ready to turn it into something real, a fight to take back our lives. I spent the morning digging through the paperwork Logan had saved, spread out across the dining table like a map of her betrayal. Bank statements, loan agreements, credit card bills, all in my name, all tied to her choices. The $20,000 car loan stung the most. I'd signed for it thinking we were building a future, not funding her escape. The student loan, $35,000 for a degree she'd abandoned, was another knife, one I hadn't even known about until she was gone. I found her note, still folded in my wallet, and added it to the pile. "I'm starting afresh with someone I love. Don't contact me. Take care of Logan." Those words weren't just a goodbye, they were evidence, proof she'd walked out and left us with nothing. I grabbed my phone and started searching for a lawyer, someone who could turn this mess into a case. By noon, I'd found Juno Malik, a local attorney whose website promised aggressive representation for fraud and debt disputes. Her reviews were solid. People called her sharp, relentless, and I liked that she didn't sugarcoat things. I called her office, expecting a secretary, but she picked up herself, her voice crisp and no nonsense. I explained everything, the loans, the credit cards, the note, Logan's tracker data, and she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Sounds like a strong case for fraud and abandonment. Can you come in today?" I glanced at the clock, 12:30. Logan was up now, eating cereal in the kitchen, and Mrs. Ortiz was still at the table, sorting papers. "Yeah," I said. "I'll be there by 2. We drove to Juno's office in Jen's borrowed car, Logan in the backseat with his backpack, Mrs. Ortiz beside me, quiet but steady. The office was small, tucked above a hardware store, with mismatched chairs and a desk piled high with files. Juno was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 30s, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed to see through you. She shook my hand, then Logan's, and nodded at Mrs. Ortiz. "Let's see what you've got," she said, clearing a space on her desk. I handed her the stack of documents, Logan's photos, the bank statements, the note, and watched her flip through them, her expression unreadable. When she got to the tracker logs, her eyebrows lifted. "Your son did this?" she asked, glancing at Logan. He nodded, shy for once, and she gave him a small smile. "Impressive." For the next hour, we laid it all out. Juno took notes, asking questions that cut straight to the point. When did I first notice the loans? Did I sign anything under pressure? Had Talia ever mentioned Nico before? I answered as best I could, my voice steady even when my hands weren't. Logan chimed in once, explaining how he'd flagged the car's VIN to the insurance company, and Juno's smile widened. "You've got a smart kid," she said, and I felt a swell of pride. Mrs. Ortiz added her piece, her voice tight with anger, describing how her daughter had always been reckless with money but never this cruel. Juno listened, scribbling, then leaned back, tapping her pen against her desk. "Here's what we're looking at," she said. "The loans in your name, without your full consent, could be fraud. The note strengthens an abandonment claim, especially with Logan involved. The tracker data, unorthodox, but useful for context. I'd start with a civil complaint, freeze any joint accounts, and request a debt reallocation hearing. We can also flag Nico for potential involvement in the fraud." I nodded, trying to keep up. What about the car? I asked. She's still driving it. Juno's eyes narrowed. If it's in your name and she took it without permission, that's theft. Your son's insurance tip was a good move. It's already got the police sniffing around. We'll push that angle, demand the car back, and use it to pressure her into cooperating. She paused, looking at me. This won't be quick, and it'll cost. My fees, court filings. But if we win, you could get the debt shifted to her, maybe even damages. I swallowed, thinking about my empty savings, but Mrs. Ortiz spoke before I could. I'll help with the costs, she said, her voice firm. This is for Logan. I met her eyes, grateful, and nodded. By the time we left, Juno had drafted a civil complaint and sent a freeze order for our joint accounts, what little was left of them. She promised to file the paperwork tomorrow and set up a hearing within weeks. Driving home, the weight of it all settled in. Not just the debt, but the fight ahead. Logan was quiet, his backpack at his feet, and I wondered what he was thinking. You did good today, bud, I said, catching his eye in the rear view. He shrugged but smiled, small and real. Mrs. Ortiz patted my arm. You're doing right by him, she said, and for the first time, I believed it. Back home, I spread Juno's notes on the table, rereading her plan: fraud, abandonment, debt reallocation. It was a lifeline, a way to claw back what Talia had taken. I thought about her at the cafe, shaky and desperate, and Nico's smug face beside her. Logan's tracker logs, his insurance tip, they were already unraveling her world. Juno's words echoed in my head. This is going to sting her more than divorce court ever could. I hope she was right. I tucked Logan in that night, his room dark except for the glow of his nightlight. We're going to be okay, I said, more to myself than him. He nodded, half asleep, and I closed the door, ready to keep fighting. The days after meeting Juno felt like we'd lit a fuse, and now we were just waiting for the explosion. The house was quieter than it had been, not because we were scared, but because we were focused, moving with a purpose I hadn't felt since before she left. Logan spent his mornings on his Chromebook, checking for updates on the car's VIN or scanning Nico's social media for anything new, while I sorted through Juno's emails, her crisp instructions piling up like a playbook for taking back our lives. Mrs. Ortiz stayed on, sleeping on the couch, her presence a steady anchor I didn't realize we needed. She cooked breakfast every day, eggs, toast, sometimes pancakes, and her quiet strength kept us grounded. But beneath it all, I could feel the storm coming. Talia wasn't going to disappear quietly, not after the cafe, not after Logan's insurance tip had the police circling her. It started with a call, a week after we filed the civil complaint. I was at the kitchen table, reviewing Juno's latest draft, a demand letter for the car's return, when my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen, and my stomach twisted, not with fear but with something closer to defiance. Logan was in the living room, building a Lego tower, and I stepped onto the porch to answer, keeping my voice low. What do you want? I said, skipping any pretense of politeness. Her voice was small, almost a whisper. Miles, please. I need help. Just to get back on my feet. I let the words hang there, her plea so different from the woman who'd sat smugly beside Nico at the cafe. I leaned against the porch railing, that would cool under my hands, and kept my tone flat. Funny. That's exactly what I said when you left. She stammered, trying to explain something about Nico, the car, the police, but I cut her off. You took everything. The savings, my credit, the car. You left Logan with a note and a pile of debt. You don't get to ask for favors now. There was a long pause, and I thought she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she hung up, the silence louder than any argument we'd ever had. I stood there, the phone still in my hand, and felt a strange calm settle over me. She wasn't in control anymore. For the first time since that note, I was. Logan noticed the change when I walked back inside. He looked up from his Legos, his eyes sharp. Was that her? I nodded, setting the phone down. Yeah, she's starting to feel it. He didn't ask what she said, just went back to his tower, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, a small victory we both shared. Later that day, Juno called with news. The joint accounts were frozen, and the police had flagged the car as stolen after Logan's tip panned out. She'll have to return it or face charges, Juno said, her voice crisp. And Nico's dealership is under investigation, shady loans, forged titles. He's not as slick as he thinks. I thanked her, my mind already racing. Nico was crumbling, and Talia was calling me, desperate. Logan's work was paying off. The fallout came faster than I expected. Talia tried calling Logan next, leaving voicemails he deleted without listening. She sent letters, handwritten, like her note, begging him to talk, promising to explain. He brought them to me, unopened, and asked me to send them back. I did, writing "return to sender" in thick marker across the envelopes. It hurt to see him so resolute, shutting her out, but I couldn't blame him. She'd chosen Nico, chosen herself, and left him to pick up the pieces. He was protecting himself, and I was proud of him for it, even if it ached to watch. Mrs. Ortiz saw one of the letters and shook her head, muttering something in Spanish about shame. She made her bed, she said later, stirring a pot of soup. Let her lie in it. Then came the news about Nico. Logan found it first, scrolling through local headlines on his Chromebook. "Dad, look," he said, turning the screen toward me. A small article, buried in the Brookridge paper, local car dealer under scrutiny for fraud. Nico's name was there, tied to bad loans and missing paperwork. By the next day, another post popped up on his social media, a vague rant about haters and moving on. Logan checked the tracker that night and grinned. He's gone. The iPad's offline, and his accounts are quiet. I raised an eyebrow, impressed. You think he skipped town? Logan nodded, snapping his laptop shut. He's not stupid enough to stay. Talia felt the hit. Another call came, this one late at night. I let it go to voicemail, her voice trembling through the speaker. "Miles, I'm sorry. Nico's gone, and I don't have anywhere to go. Please, just talk to me." I deleted it without calling back. She was jobless now. Juno had confirmed she'd been fired from her part-time gig at a boutique, and the motel in Brookridge wasn't cheap. I pictured her alone, her plans unraveling, and felt no pity. She'd built this mess, and now it was collapsing around her. Logan overheard me telling Mrs. Ortiz about the voicemail and shrugged. "She thought she could just start over," he said, his voice flat. "She forgot about us." I spent the next few days tying up loose ends. Juno filed for the debt reallocation hearing, and the car was recovered by the police, parked outside a diner in Brookridge. Talia wasn't there. She'd vanished again, probably crashing with a friend, but the car was back, one less weight on my shoulders. I sold it through Juno's contact, a dealer who didn't ask questions, and used the cash to chip away at the loan. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Mrs. Ortiz helped with bills, slipping me cash when Logan wasn't looking, and I took on extra shifts at the warehouse, my body tired but my mind clear. One night, after Logan went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, Juno's paperwork spread out in front of me. The complaint was moving forward, and the hearing was set for next month. Talia would have to face it, face us, or lose everything. I thought about her calls, her letters, the way she'd gone from cocky to crumbling in weeks. Logan's tracker, his tips, his stubborn fight, they tipped the scales. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and let out a long breath. We weren't free yet, but we were close. The fallout was hers now, not ours. I folded the papers, tucked them away, and turned off the light, ready for whatever came next. The weeks after the car was recovered felt like we'd finally caught our breath. The house wasn't so heavy anymore, like the air had cleared after a storm. I could walk into the living room without seeing her note on the coffee table, could open the fridge without thinking about the savings she'd drained. Logan was lighter too, his laugh coming easier, his Lego towers growing taller on the living room floor. Mrs. Ortiz had gone back home, promising to return for the debt hearing, and her absence left a quiet we were ready to fill ourselves. For the first time since she left, I wasn't just surviving. I was rebuilding, piece by piece, for me and my son. I started with the car money. Selling it brought in enough to knock $10,000 off the loan, a dent that felt like a victory after weeks of drowning in numbers. I sat at the kitchen table one night, crunching the math on a notepad, $10,000 down, $45,000 to go. It was still a mountain, but it wasn't unclimbable. I'd taken a second job, part-time carpentry with a guy from the warehouse who needed help on weekends. The work was hard, sawing boards, hauling lumber, my hands raw by Sunday night. But it paid cash, and every dollar went to the debt or groceries. Logan noticed the extra hours, the way I'd come home dusty and tired, and started pitching in without me asking. He'd have dinner ready 3 nights a week, mac and cheese, sometimes spaghetti, simple stuff he'd learned from watching Mrs. Ortiz. I'd walk in, the smell hitting me, and find him stirring a pot, proud but trying not to show it. "Eat, Dad," he'd say, pointing to a plate like he was the boss. I'd laugh, ruffle his hair, and we'd sit together, the kitchen warm with something better than food: hope. One afternoon, I caught him signing up for a robotics club at school, his Chromebook open to a form he was filling out. "What's this?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. He shrugged, typing his name in careful letters. "They build stuff, robots, drones, things like that. I thought it'd be cool." I smiled, remembering how he'd tracked her iPad, flagged the car's VIN, outsmarted us all. "You're gonna run that club in a month," I said, and he grinned, not arguing. It was good to see him like this, focused on something new, not just the mess she'd left. I signed the form, paid the fee with my carpentry cash, and felt a small weight lift. He deserved this, a chance to be a kid again, not a detective. The house needed work too. That coffee table, the one where I'd found her note, had to go. I'd pass it every day, the memory of that night creeping in like a splinter. One Saturday, I loaded it into Jen's borrowed truck and hauled it to a thrift shop, replacing it with a cheap one from a garage sale, sturdy, no history. I did the same with the couch, trading it for a second-hand one that didn't carry her shadow. Logan helped pick out a new kitchen table, a small round one we found online, and when we set it up, he ran his hand over the wood, nodding like it passed a test. "Looks better," he said, and I agreed. New energy, new start. Bit by bit, we were erasing her from the places she'd hurt us most. Work was steadier now too. The warehouse manager gave me a small raise, not much, but enough to cover the electric bill without sweating. Juno's case was moving forward, the hearing just weeks away, and she'd warned me it could get ugly. "She'll have to show up or default," Juno said over the phone, her voice calm but sharp. "Either way, we've got the evidence, your son's logs, the note, the loan papers. It's solid." I thanked her, my mind already on the future. If we won, the debt could shift to Talia, maybe even get us damages. If we lost, I'd keep working, keep paying, but I wasn't scared of that anymore. Logan and I had faced worse and come out stronger. One night, after a long day of framing a porch for my carpentry gig, I came home to find Logan at the kitchen table, his robotics club binder open, sketches of gears and circuits scattered around him. He looked up, his eyes bright, and said, "Dad, you were strong. But I was there to hold the rope when you slipped." I stopped, my jacket half off, and stared at him. The words hit deep, not because they were fancy, but because they were true. I'd been ready to break that first night, crushed by her note, the debt, the betrayal. He'd kept me going, his notebook, his tracker, his stubborn fight. I walked over, pulling him into a hug, and felt my throat tighten. "You're right, bud," I said, my voice rough. "You held the rope. Still are." He hugged back, his small frame solid, and for a moment, we just stood there, the house quiet around us. I thought about that rope later, lying in bed, the ceiling fan humming above me. He'd given me something to hold on to, but I was giving him something too, a dad who didn't quit, a home we were making ours again. The debt was still there, the hearing looming, but they didn't scare me like they used to. I'd sold the car, taken the second job, replaced the furniture, small wins, but they added up. Logan was cooking, laughing, joining clubs, becoming someone I was proud of every day. I closed my eyes, picturing the new table, the way he'd smiled when we set it up. We were rebuilding, not just the house but us, and no one, not her, not Nico, not the debt, could take that away. The next morning, I woke early, the sun barely up, and started coffee. Logan shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, and grabbed a bowl for cereal. "Robotics today?" I asked, pouring him a cup of juice. He nodded, already talking about a drone he wanted to build, his hands moving as he explained the parts. I listened, leaning against the counter, and felt the warmth of it all. The kitchen, the coffee, the kid who'd saved me as much as I'd saved him. We weren't done fighting, but we were winning, one day at a time. A year had passed since that night I found her note, and the world felt different now, steadier, brighter, like we'd rebuilt it from the ground up. The house was ours again, not just a place haunted by her absence. Logan was taller, his voice a little deeper, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence I hadn't seen before. I was different too, still tired some days, still working 2 jobs, but stronger, like the weight of her betrayal had forged something unbreakable in me. We'd clawed our way out of the worst of it, and tonight, as I sat on the porch with a soda, the stars sharp above, I felt a peace I hadn't thought possible. Then my phone buzzed, her name lighting up the screen, and the calm I'd built wavered just for a second. I hadn't heard from her in months, not since the debt hearing, where where Juno's case had shifted most of the loans to her name, leaving me with just a fraction to pay off. She'd shown up that day, quiet and pale, no Nico, no excuses, just a lawyer who barely spoke. Logan's evidence, the note, the tracker logs, the forged loan papers, had been enough to tip the scales. She didn't fight it, didn't look at me or Logan as the judge ruled. I'd walked out with my son, lighter than I'd been in years, and we hadn't looked back. Now here she was, calling again, and I knew it wasn't about money or apologies. I let it ring twice, then answered, my voice calm but firm. What is it? Her voice was soft, hesitant, like she was testing the water. I heard about Logan winning the state robotics championship. Can I come see him? I leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking under me, and let the words settle. The robotics win had been big. Logan's drone, a sleek thing he'd built with his club, had outflown every other team's, earning him a trophy and a write-up in the local paper. I'd been there, cheering louder than anyone, my chest tight with pride. She hadn't been part of it, hadn't earned the right to share in it. No, I said, keeping my tone even. She pushed, her voice cracking. But I'm his mother. I didn't hesitate. You were. Until you left a 10-year-old to fight a battle you started. I hung up before she could say more, the phone heavy in my hand. The stars were still there, the night still quiet, and I took a slow sip of soda, letting the moment pass. I'd spent so long angry, her note, the debt, the way she'd chosen Nico over us. But now, that anger was gone, replaced by something solid, something hers couldn't touch. I heard the screen door creak, and Logan stepped out, his robotics trophy tucked under his arm like it was no big deal. He sat beside me, setting it on the porch rail, and glanced at my phone. Was that her? He asked, his voice steady, no trace of the hurt I knew he still carried. I nodded. Yeah. He tilted his head, waiting. You okay? I looked at him, his face half lit by the porch light, and smiled. I am now. We didn't say much after that, just sat there, the crickets humming in the yard. I thought about the year behind us, the hospital scare, the cafe showdown, Juno's fight in court. Logan's notebook, his tracker, his stubborn belief that we could win. It had carried us through. I'd sold the car, worked the carpentry gigs, paid down what debt was left. He'd cooked dinners, joined robotics, held the rope when I was slipping. We'd replaced the furniture, rebuilt the house, made it ours. The $55,000 she'd left us with was mostly hers now, and what remained was manageable, a shadow of what it had been. I wasn't rich, wasn't free of work, but I was free of her, and that was enough. Logan tapped the trophy, the medal catching the light. They want me to do nationals next, he said, almost shy. I raised an eyebrow, impressed. Nationals? You gonna build something even crazier? He grinned, the kind of grin that reminded me of the kid he'd been before her note, before he had to grow up too fast. Maybe. Got some ideas. I laughed, leaning back, and felt the porch chair hold me steady. You'll kill it, bud. Always do. He didn't say anything, just nodded, but I could see he believed it too. The night stretched on, cool and clear, and I thought about her call, her voice so small compared to the woman who'd left us. She'd heard about his win, probably saw the paper, and thought she could slip back in, claim a piece of his light. But she didn't belong here, not in this house, not in this moment. Logan had shut her out a year ago, returning her letters, blocking her calls, and I'd backed him every step. She'd made her choice, and we'd made ours. I looked at him, polishing his trophy with his sleeve, and felt a surge of gratitude. He wasn't just my son, he was my partner, my reason, my strength when I'd had none. Let's order pizza, I said, standing, the chair scraping the porch. His eyes lit up. Pepperoni. I nodded, pulling out my phone. And extra cheese. We're celebrating. He grabbed the trophy, following me inside, and we flipped on the living room lights, the glow chasing out the last of the dark. I called the pizza place, the guy on the line joking about how we were keeping them in business. Logan sprawled on the new couch, sketching drone designs on a notepad, already planned.